Well, this video, this recording was going to start very differently had the end of the race ended slightly differently than maybe it was looking. It was going to get very visceral from me. Three laps from the end, we managed to avoid that. We've got Piastri with his very first win in a feature race at the Hungarian Grand Prix. So why does it feel a bit hollow? Little bit hollow. There's a lot of talking points to go in with this one. McLaren get a 1-2. Max not even on the podium. We should be cheering, and we've got probably more questions than celebrations that we have right now. But I'm curious on your initial thoughts of the race. For me, like right off the cuff, it's just I feel like Piastri deserved a better first win. At least, yeah. Very first thoughts. We're going to go into sort of all of it. I'm going to try and break it down within about 45 minutes or so. I don't know how well we're going to do, but yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are of the race as a whole.
There's probably two main ways you could sum it up. One is that it felt like only one driver of the entire grid was truly happy after that race.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the driver on P1.
Yeah.
And we could probably spend about a 2-hour-long podcast just talking about 4 drivers, when I think actually every driver had a really interesting race today. If you actually go back and look at anyone that's not the top 5, there was actually a ton going on, which we didn't need to pay attention to because there was so much going on at the top.
Yeah.
So it's just insane. Yeah, I mean, we talked about these, last few races, particularly these final 2 towards the end of the year, and thinking that hopefully this will be really good. You look at it in isolation, and actually for the health of the championship, for hoping we're going to have good races and good fights, this definitely shows that.
Yep.
But you're right, in a race which should be going, oh my god, like the Red Bull was nowhere, and Max lost his lid, and the McLarens are on fire, and Hamilton's got it again. You're still coming out of it going, that's not even what you want to talk about, because there's so much else. I think I said it wasn't like a great race. It was like a super interesting race. Like just watching it unfold was like, this is all really interesting. Like, not just like, whoa, look at the fights. It was just like, why did he say that? Why did they do that? Whoa, what? And then you kind of get off the ride, and all day I've just been playing it over in my head and just thinking, why would they do this? So, as I said, I think we could spend 2 hours here just on like 4 drivers alone. So we'll have to see how we go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about really what everyone's I guess what everyone's talking about. Like they're talking about Max and they're talking about the McLarens, right? Let's talk about the McLarens. They did get their 1-2. It was honestly a pretty comfortable 1-2 in the end, but what way around the 1-2 was cause for a lot of speculation for most of the back half of that race. Every time I feel
want to hear your thoughts first. I've really settled quite quickly on how I kind of see this.
Okay.
But before I go into monologuing, I'm also want to get your thoughts before I almost
because I feel like every time I come to an opinion on it, I kind of have another thought, and I'm like, well, that I can kind of see why. I guess the end of the day, I've kind of see why Norris, Piastri, and the team all did the things they did. They all made sense in their own isolated ways. So, like, for instance, the team probably they're the one you could argue you probably argue gets the most flack for this. You can see why they pit Norris beforehand to cover off Hamilton, because Hamilton was very, very fast at the time on a track that they knew was hard for overtaking. They wanted to make sure they stayed ahead to secure that 1-2. They intentionally left Piastri out a couple more laps to try and give him the tyre delta. He came out behind Norris, wasn't as fast as Norris, like pretty clearly from the get-go, he was slower than Norris, and Norris made it a point to prove that he was faster than Piastri behind him as well. So you could argue for Lando saying, well, had they pit Piastri first anyway, would Lando have won the race because he had that much more pace? They probably would have let him fight. They had said earlier in the race, the team had said that you're okay to fight them. That was slightly earlier before the pit stop, but you would be surprised if they said, no, we don't want you to fight. They've done that to Lando before with a Ricciardo win. Even if they did say that, I can't imagine he would have gone for that. This was obviously a slightly different scenario. And we didn't really hear much from Piastri on the radio until about five laps to go, when he's like, he's leaving this a bit late, fellas. And you can understand if Lando didn't give the place back, why Piastri would be aggrieved, because they had favoured the second driver on the track strategy-wise, when normally that's not what they do. And it seemed pretty obvious from comments after the race that the team made that decision. It was not Lando and Oscar that made that decision. The team made that decision for them, because that was in the best interest of the team. So there's a lot of... It's a lot more complex than it maybe first seems. It's easy to take one side, but I don't think it's quite... It's not quite that simple. I think it's just a real... The culmination of all these events just sort of ended up in this really awful situation, which was akin, they were saying even on commentary, and it's hard to go past the comparison of the Multi-21 with Vettel and Webber, and it was very much looking like, oh, this is where the teammates, this is where it breaks down. This is the race where it happens. And thankfully, with a few laps to go, it didn't result to that, but it still kind of left a bit of a sour feeling in fans, in the McLaren drivers, in the McLaren garage. It's just not the way you really want to end that race, being the first 1-2 you've had since that Ricciardo Norris one in Imola a couple of years back. So, yeah, I mean, that's really my overarching thoughts. Is I get it. I think ultimately it all ended up the right way, and I think if you have to place blame at anyone, the strategy team for McLaren probably should not have put those drivers in that position in the first place. But again, you can see why they pit Norris when they did. So I think it's just a little bit of hindsight is 2020 for that sort of thing. And they're kind of learning how to manage two drivers, kind of like Mercedes had to do with Hamilton, Rosberg, two championship or race-winning drivers, I guess, at this point, two drivers that are so closely matched, it seems. Yeah, it's just something, another weekend where they're learning how to manage their team and their drivers. So
isn't it just? It's very much, we've talked so much about the last few races about how they are now having to really be on the limit with other teams, and they have to make the right calls and make it the right way. And, other thing that we haven't even talked about with teams growing to being competitive is that your two drivers do start to butt heads or get into scenarios, and managing that, especially early, is important because, to your point, as much as Mercedes was a thing, I mean, they were so far out in front that it's, they weren't fighting anyone else, so they just had to fight each other. With the Red Bulls, that almost was the turning point, where from then they just didn't work together. And it was almost just lucky that Webber just didn't have the ultimate pace that Vettel did, because if they were close enough, they would have just been at each other's throats 24/7. Like, that was that day, the relationship was gone, after that day. So just on that point, it is the growing pains. I mean, in the broad scheme of things to do with setting up the car, the strategy, the qualifying, they obviously nailed it. Like, they killed it. I mean, Red Bull were obviously still struggling, but they still had, we'll talk about that in a bit because I got a few other thoughts too, but like, they still look strong. The Mercedes looked strong. Even the Ferrari weren't that far away. But they nailed it. So as a general team, finally they get another one too. It feels weird they haven't had one in so long.
Yeah.
Especially when it felt so concisive. It wasn't because of a crash. It wasn't because of the driver having trouble. They just earned it and had the overall pace.
Yep.
So as we say, you look at it almost just as a result. Like if you were, if we're looking at the end of the year and look back to this race, we go, oh yeah, it was a McLaren 1-2, and you go, that's when they picked it up. So without going deeper than that, that itself just looks good for them.
Yeah.
But as a story, it's I mean, as I'll get into, I think.
Please monologue.
There was
monologue away.
Yeah, there was
I'm
kind
curious.
of one. If looking at the race as a whole for both the drivers and the team, there was almost just one aspect of it which does sully the whole thing. So if you kind of go from start to finish, we had the start. This is the 5th time that Norris has started on pole and he has lost the lead into T1.
Yep.
So yeah, again, and that's more on him. Like, he was very aggressive coming across to Oscar. Mind you, Oscar having the guts to keep his foot down and send it on the inside and leave
move.
just about the amount of room. That was actually a phenomenal move into T1.
Yep.
Oh my god. When we saw the Bottas bowling in the past and all of that,
Yeah.
this was insane.
Yeah.
He didn't even know, of course, that also sullied Max and others, but of course he was just caring about giving enough room for his teammate, which he did.
Yep.
Also the onboard from Norris, having the line to keep between two cars who were very close, they easily could have collided.
Yep.
100%. We saw it
Could have
at,
been all three taken
at Miami.
out. Yeah.
Exactly. We saw some of the things in Miami with drivers doing wrong things. They made it work,
Yep.
which was good credits to them. But Piastri got ahead. Initially, you thought, okay, Piastri's ahead. However, it is a hot circuit. We know tyres are going to be insanely bad here. There are drivers pitting on lap 1 because they're trying alternate strategies on the tyres. We know that Lando's quick, and even partway through the stint, even when they put out a gap, they said to Lando, you're allowed to fight the other car. They basically told him. They said, hey, you're quick enough. As much as we're a 1-2, you're allowed to fight him. So even that early precedent early, they let both drivers know, of course we're going to manage it, but you guys are fast. If he catches up and you fight, we're going to let it happen. We don't want to be this team. We're not going to say, oh, the points and everything. It's like, no. You guys are okay to fight early on. But Piastri managed it well. Like they said in the commentary near the end of his stint, they're like, he's not really losing much time to Norris, who we've said in the heat is one of the best at managing his tyres. So even then, taking a positive moving forward, Piastri really did manage his tyres well. The one thing that really, in hindsight, could have helped him is if he didn't make that mistake in the second
that one
stint.
mistake.
Because he had such a stint where even if Norris pitted early, he would have had enough to come out in front. Not on him. It was credit he had so much of a gap that he could make the mistake, and ultimately he stayed ahead. I mean, that was, on him. It was just the slightest little thing. He caught it, but it would have hurt him a little bit.
Yeah.
So you can't really fault him too much for that. And even how they managed the drivers up to that point, no problem at all. The team did have a large gap to Hamilton, and even though the undercut was strong, he was also on the hards, which meant that he wasn't going to gain that much. They were more looking because they boxed him early to have like a faster overall stint, but it wasn't a medium where he was going to thunder them down and the tyres didn't really have too much of a warm-up window out of the pits. It was like half a lap and you're generally up to speed. It wasn't like you needed, 2 laps because they were made of ice and therefore people could get past you. The fact that they boxed Norris early, even though you'd argue they kind of have a gap, if they were 100% assured that to both drivers and they said, we'll just swap them around, no qualm
That's
at
a good
all,
point, yeah.
there's still no reason not to do it. Like, the risk of Hamilton, undercutting him is basically none. They mainly said they did it because they wanted to eliminate any chance of a slow pit stop. Just in case there was an issue in the pit stop. Almost like Verstappen in Austria, like that slow pit stop did kind of wield them together.
Yeah.
So technically factoring that in, if you're fully confident the drivers are just going to sort it out immediately and no one's really going to talk about it, that was still the right call to do and I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
The problem I have is that then they get into this mode of pleading. Why are they pleading? If and after the race, they're all saying, and what's his name? Seidel and everyone is saying, no, we knew he would do it. There was no concern. It's like,
I don't believe that.
Why were you pleading with him on the radio? Why were you saying, think of the Sunday briefing? It's like, you don't need to say that. You could just say, just checking in, you're going to let him by. And he might say, yep, just pulling the gap in case maybe Hamilton catches up, in case we have a slide, I'll let him through at the end. And then everyone goes, okay, that makes sense. What if Piastri accidentally makes a mistake? What if suddenly Max is flying through? Because he kind of was. There is a chance that you can just wait, but he could just say on the radio and just say, no, I will.
Yeah.
I'm just going to manage this for now. And even them saying, you're pushing the tire too hard. Every lap, they're going, save on 4 more, save on 4 more. And he's ignoring them. It's just like, that's the one thing that just sullied it. It's just like, why this pleading thing? Everything afterwards, it doesn't matter. Because you go, why were you pleading?
Yeah.
I can't say it enough. That's just the bit that makes it feel so weird.
I think even,
Bleh.
like... there's that, but also the after. I did read a lot of the comments after the race where, like you say, they said, "Oh yeah, they're confident it was getting past." It's like, no, I don't believe that. And then Norris,
and everything that was happening showed no confidence whatsoever.
Well, and Norris was like, "I was always going to let him back past." It's like, no, you weren't. Shut up.
No,
don't lie. No. You're just blatantly lying to people's faces, saying, "I was always going to let him back past." Like,
I know.
No, you weren't.
If all he had have said, even if he just had said one-liner just to try, you wouldn't have blamed him. Where he said, is it worth it for me to chase Max down the championship? And if the team had just said, worth considering, but we want to swap it. If they left it like that, still, you would have gone, that's a fair question to ask. Because, hey, it's a fair enough point to make. And I'm glad the team didn't go down that route. There was a chance where they may have decided that was going down that route. But look what happened to Ferrari in 04, I think it was, when they did that when they were like 100 points ahead. It was like the most booed thing in history because they said, for a scheme of things, it's not worth it to do right now. And to Oscar's point, they know that if in 3 races to go, Lando does need, a position swap for the championship, of course he'll do it because it's more appropriate in that scenario. It's not here. So even if he had have just asked it, I would have given him that. That's fair enough. But the next 20 radio messages beyond that it's beyond me. It undermines everything. I don't know. It's what leaves the sour taste for me.
Yeah, I think that the other point to make is that I can't remember a time where Piastri hasn't, like when he's had team orders, because there's been quite a few
100%.
times. He's always moved aside. Always. Every single time he's played the team game. And then the one time that they give the team orders to Norris, granted it's for the lead, sure. It's for the number 1 spot on the podium, sure. But the one time Norris is like, actually, no, I'm not going to do it. It was even like the comments in the cool down room, like being a real standoffish with Hamilton. Hamilton, all they said, he's like, hey, you got a quick car. And he's like, you had a quick car for 7 years. It's like, bro, you're a child. You are being so childish. He was obviously right now.
Like, he can say, I was always going to learn through, I'm chill. But he obviously wasn't chill. He was not. Very high strung afterwards. Obviously, upset about things, whatever. Which again, even if, of course, I imagine in hindsight, halfway through the week, he's going to cool down. He's going to go, no, of course I was going to let him through. I'd probably be fired by the team if I didn't let him through, knowing how much of an example they would have made of this. So, but you could still tell in the moment he was very disgruntled about it and would have wanted to go off and talk about it, which again just says so much more than what he let him by.
He was saying he was like he was upset because he lost the win at the start, which is true. He did lose the win right at the start by not going into the lead. It's like, it wasn't about the change of position at all. It's like, fuck off, it wasn't. It was all about the change of position. 100%, it was all about that. So, I mean, the one like solace I've got from the fact is that let's just say, as an example, Piastri was Max's teammate, Max would not have done that. Norris at least it took him almost the rest of the race to do it and to actually come to his senses and make the right decision. But he did end up doing it. Someone like Max would not do that.
No.
And you know what? Unless you want to talk more about that, we can move into the Max saga, because that's also a fun one.
Plenty to chat about with Max.
He was an angry man all weekend, but this race in particular, he was, my God. If we're talking childish, he takes the cake this weekend. I don't know where you want to start with that, but
we've been teased with a frustrated Max when he's won, or even when he's qualified near the front, or still when he's had a decent race, he still finds something to be frustrated about. And he has come out and said that is because that is what like motivates him, motivates the team, because he's always been worried that the team will get too complacent when he's trying to tell them, do not get complacent at any point at all. We need to maximize, haha, Max, every single thing that we do, every strategy call, every decision. And he kept finding things all weekend to say, we did not maximize this. We didn't maximize practice. We didn't maximize quality and do it right. We didn't do the race right, strategy wrong, tire wrong, this wrong, that wrong. And it did get to a peak where you like Max can almost get to like a 90% point where he can still perform even when he's in this 90% angry, angsty. We've heard him on the radio make amazing moves and he's still shouting and yelling and whatnot. And he still wins by a mile and does some amazing moves, right? But he got beyond that. And we saw that with kind of, I guess we'll go through his race, but we kind of got that with the final move on Hamilton. That was a pure frustration incident move, purely out of frustration. He didn't need to do that. He had so much more pace. He could be more patient. It just, you actually saw it. And as much as we get onto him, Hamilton drove around him so well all the race. Even in T2, they were together. He gave him room. Like middle of the race, they were together. Later the race, he was almost just like looking at this screaming baby going, what the hell? I'm just going to give you a bit of room, buddy. And he's seeing him go around here and fly off the track there. And then he gets the podium and he's like, I'm cool as a cucumber, baby. So
like you say,
the duality of the two of them. He was
the only happy person all weekend. You were right.
And he was so cool and chill compared to Max screaming at him, yeeting it down the inside. But I mean, we can kind of go through it, I guess, from start to end and pick out the pivotal points of Max's journey this weekend.
If you want to go, you probably got a better idea. I haven't.
Well, I didn't even realize how different the Red Bulls were until we saw Martin's grid walk. I guess I didn't pay too close attention to practice if they went through it. But one of the big visual factors of the Red Bull, particularly for what they changed for the start of the year, was the engine cover. And they had the side, what do you call them? The big silo things that stick up quite aggressively. And they showed it so well. Martin did a good job because he started at the back to show Checo's car. And Checo's car, A, wasn't going to have all the upgrades anyway, but B, was a bit of a Franken car because they had to pull some parts from his big accident. And you saw it and you still went, oh, some bits there look a bit odd and that paint shouldn't be there, but it still looked like the Red Bull with the big shoulders on the side. And then went to Max's car, and I didn't even realize they've like removed those things. They're like gone. Like the back of the cockpit, it kind of goes out now to like a bit near the end, and then it juts out a bit. Like it still looks very unique.
Yeah,
it's totally different. I was like, wait, this is a massively different car.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't realize the change was that big. Like I thought, oh, they'll change the wing, they'll do some bits here, but it is a pretty fundamental change. One which they fast tracked because Max was worried about this, and obviously that was part of his frustration. But if this is also the massive upgrade and this is what it yielded them for performance, again, it says even more about both Max's frustration because he's going, why the hell weren't we winning this thing if we've just brought an upgrade forward and used all our development budget and we ain't bloody winning? What the hell? And second to McLaren, holy crap, they're maximizing shit out there.
Also, I mean, thirdly, apparently his race pace was not as strong as Perez's, which that's
even Lando was saying
surprise.
We're worried about Perez because his race pace was strongest on Friday. I was like,
Yeah, very strange. Probably pretty lucky that he crashed out in Q1 like he seems to always do. So
we'll have time for that. We've got your segment.
But yeah, like I think that's a fair point about how he can operate in that sort of window where he is frustrated and angry, but once he hits that breaking point, it just becomes like borderline dangerous. And
it just overflows so hard and fast. It's like a barrier that builds up, but it doesn't just overspill, it fails, you know?
Well, it's the kind of dichotomy between someone like a Lewis who's unhappy with the car. He just goes into his like depressed, it doesn't matter. He just kind of lets everyone through. Not or dangerous,
Alonso,
or an Alonso, same thing. Or Alonso will spin out on his own because we've seen that recently where he'll just make his own mistakes. Max's is kind of the opposite, where he just gets overly aggressive and makes these super like, you know, year one Max, where everyone was criticizing, saying, why is he in the sport? You know, doing these dive bombs from so far and taking other drivers out. And that's what he reverts to in these situations. And the longer the season goes on, if McLaren are consistently the quicker car, and if Mercedes are, making upgrades as well, and that Red Bull upgrade actually
just
isn't
making life difficult in general.
just in general, exactly. This is gonna happen more often. I'm half expecting some kind of big accident with him at the helm. Maybe not Spa, but second half of the season if trends continue the way they are. Like you say, he's not happy that the team's not maximizing every part of it, and if it keeps going the way it's going, he's going to cause a big accident. I think
it's pretty incredible how the accident with Lewis wasn't a big accident. It had every hallmark that should have taken 2 cars out of the race.
Yep.
And we would be talking a very different outcome if that accident had resulted in even one of the cars out. Imagine if that accident took both of them out. We would be going, ban him for a race. We would, some people would to an extreme. He basically screamed it in the inside. There is some argument that Lewis could have given in room, I know, but it would have been such a different outcome if either of those cars were taken out. You would be viewing it so different. The fact that the stewards basically looked at it, went, they sorted it out, because nothing did happen to them, it says enough. But
right, I was going to actually ask what your thought was on not giving him a penalty on that, but I guess
it's all because of the result, isn't it? I mean, he somehow you kind of saw the onboard and you saw there was a bit of contact. It wasn't the second time when you saw how high he got in the air. And he landed so hard that there was an imprint of the plank in the ground because of it slamming into the ground.
And I think that...
And somehow he just pulled it around and just...
I'm pretty sure he had to see the medical car as well because of the amount of force that was registered.
He even had comments on that, ridiculous comments. But yes, it triggered enough to say you need to get checked out because that was quite an impact on his rear end.
I still don't know if I agree with the non-penalty, if I'm completely honest. You said obviously because, nothing really came of it and he sort of just took himself out. Normally they try not to judge that when they're doing incidents. It's not about how much they judge the incident as it is. Exactly.
But if they self-penalize, like he technically lost a place, and in their eyes they may have gone, that was enough of a penalty without needing to give it a penalty. We've talked about this so much. It's such a hard thing because when you look at it like that, you go, I mean, Lewis didn't end up losing a place, and Max did end up losing so much that he got a place, so it kind of worked out, but he's not... It's just luck that happened, If Lewis had a spun around, he loses 2 places, do you give him a 10-second, a 20-second, or whatever? Do you do something else, regardless of what you have to do a bit of both, because when you kind of say it out loud, it's like... I don't know, because then you're going to have some scenarios where you go, 20-second penalty and it looks right because you took a car out. In other instances, you would do it where you go, well, that feels harsh considering what happened to him afterwards. And then we're trying to go, no, you can't look at afterwards or before, but you do have to do just some element. I guess they talked to them. Maybe Lewis was just like, I don't care, and they went,
he
all
still
right,
got
I'm
his
not going to
podium,
push it.
maybe.
I know. Sometimes they do, if the other driver does push it really hard, I feel like they will. That's why they like to talk to them. That's probably why in this scenario it was wise to talk to the both of them. Maybe it's one where, a penalty in a vacuum, even a light one, does sound more logical. Even a reprimand, I guess they didn't give him. I would have expected that. Not that it means much. I guess it means a penalty point or whatever, but it would have made it a statement.
Yeah, he should have got some penalty points for that sort of move because that's a reckless move. And at the very least, even if it wrecked his own race, he should get some penalty points, I think. And the fact that he didn't is... I think that's probably a bit of a blunder.
Quite lucky from his side, really.
Yeah, it's quite.
And we did have the T1, I guess, where he went wide. He tried to not give it back.
Yeah, he was forced wide, apparently. Yeah. See, this is my problem with Max, is, every other driver can, reflect and be like, oh, okay, maybe I was in the wrong there. Max doesn't have that ability. He is just right every single time. And I think this is why people don't like him that much. A lot of people do, but I think the people that don't like him, this is one of the biggest reasons, is every move he does is completely okay, and every move someone else does against him is completely wrong and it's against the rules. And there's no ability for him to reflect and be like, oh, actually, no, I just said that in the heat of the moment. Maybe that's, he just doesn't have that ability. He just doubles down, and it just
take factors in outside the box. Yeah, like in the moment, he probably didn't know they were 3 wide.
Yes.
Then he just saw that Lando ran him out of road. Now, if it was just the 2 of them and Lando did that without anyone on the inside, he probably has a case because even Lando went off by a little bit, and you go, well, hold on, that was a bit bad.
Yeah,
but as we said, he was judging a 3rd car on the inside, which Max couldn't have known.
Yeah.
He said he was ahead at the apex. Again, that's because he thundered it down, and he wasn't going to make the line anyway.
Yes.
If he pulled up, he would have had to slow up a lot, which Lando was even clever enough to go, no. He was thundering it down. He wasn't going to make it. You can't use that case.
I'm so annoyed at people saying I was ahead at the apex as their justification.
It's like shoving it on the inside when you're never going to make it. Go, I was ahead, so he can't turn in.
Yeah, he was ahead at the. He was ahead at the
T2. Stop it.
He was ahead at the apex when he dive bombed Hamilton as well, but doesn't mean he fucking made the move. Like, come on, dude. Read the fucking regulations.
Yes.
God. Oh my God. He just gave me an aneurysm this race. Like, he really did.
Yeah. And even then when they were coming through, like Hamilton starting, what did he start? 4th, was it? Because he was between 2 Ferraris. Was it 5th then? He had to have started 5th. He was between 2 Ferraris.
Yes, that's correct. Because I think Sainz was the leading Ferrari, and Leclerc got a much better
6th,
start.
and he was disappointed he didn't get 5th. Yeah. So even Hamilton was almost in 2nd because he kind of took the inside when the 3 cars were going wide.
Yeah.
Into T2, he was around the outside. Max, who rejoined, didn't give him enough to take that line basically. And then Lando also didn't give him any guff, which was smart from Lewis, and we've said this a few times. Almost all the battles he had, he was smart about it. Like, he could have been up into 2nd if he was aggressive enough, and then he would have been ahead of Max and Norris. And God knows how that would have also taken
himself out by going onto the grass and spinning into the wall.
Exactly, so he was wise to just hold it back. And in the big picture of the race, it paid off. I mean, we saw that his strategy was good. He was even worried about the tires, but he made it work. I know we're crossing a bit between Max and Hamilton, but they came together so much. You talk about them.
Half the race they were battling, it seemed.
I know. But even the first time Max really made a move on him, and he did have the better tires, and Hamilton just drove well. He defended it right. It's very easy to defend into T1 and just get caught with your pants down to T2. He drove Max perfectly around that corner where he then had to back out of it. Almost a flip of lap 1. Different thing, because lap 1, you can forgive drivers for kind of being all over the place. He judged that to perfection. And even later on, where even though they made contact, he still turned in a bit, but then he was still smart about it. He was even smart at that point because Max was overtaking him while Lewis was getting slipstream and DRS from the Williams. And he even was drafting the Williams, jumped out at the last point and kind of, made a good enough of an effort for it. Assumed Max couldn't make it, which is why he probably didn't defend it. But it almost felt good in a way that it paid off for him, that he got that final podium spot. Wouldn't have had the pace overall, which I think he agreed with. Even on the strategy, you could argue was never going to get him to that 1-2 as well. So for the cards that he was dealt, which he did now and then say, this is a really difficult strategy, put me on here, guys. He showed you could make it work. You keep a cool head, and you can get still, you're at the podium, which even on a perfect strategy, you'd argue he probably wasn't getting the McLarens that day regardless. We saw how bad that dirty air was. I think that was another thing for the Norris Piastri, where some people were saying Norris was so fast at the end, but he also was ahead, and if you're behind another car and by a little bit, you will just burn that rubber so quick it's not even funny. Even when he let him through, he was kind of going for him, but then you could tell he just dropped off because you're too close. So as I say, Hamilton used that well to protect behind from Max and the Ferraris the whole race. And it felt good. It felt like a well-earned 200th podium for him, which is a lot of podiums. God damn.
You forget how he was on the podium a lot for about 7 years, 8 years.
You do.
But yeah, no, I 100% agree. He drove. Arguably, he probably drove the best race out of everyone. Like, he kept it. I think Norris did pretty well in terms of his racing outside the turn 1 lap 1 incident, which
But
is
you
probably
can't say he drove the base when he did lose the lead at the
Exactly,
start.
yeah.
If he had kept that lead, he would have had it.
and
100%.
then Piastri, obviously, he had a couple of little offs that sort of tainted that a bit and made life, as we talked about, a little bit more difficult for the McLaren team. You didn't really have that with Hamilton. At least they didn't show anything.
No.
And yeah, every time he was in a fight with the most aggressive driver, particularly aggressive on this day, in the field on literally half the race, he put his car in all the right places. And yeah, it meant he came home for that P3. So you'd have to argue who's probably the best driver in this race with the machinery he was given. So
the only one I can't comment on because I don't know enough is Tsunoda, who one-stopped and got points out of it. I heard was a very good driver.
He went a long way on those mediums. I think he went 29, 30 laps or something on that first set of mediums, and he was still like, I think he was like P6 or P7, and then he pitted and he came out P10 on the hard tires. I'm like, how has no one else been able to do this? Like, it was pretty unbelievable how
he credit where it's due.
Yeah.
When you looked at how much the guys two stopping struggled, how did he do that? Especially when everyone was so close. So again, I don't know the full details of it because we weren't really focusing on it. It's just when I heard it, I went, someone managed to one stop and it worked. I was like, it's Tsunoda again.
Yep. Because there was I think there was a lot of, well, I say a lot of people. There was a few people that were considering the one stop. I think Leclerc, there was like they obviously talk in code constantly all the time with their plan F or whatever the fuck it is these days. Where it's like he's obviously stayed out. You know, the people have tried to undercut him. He's stayed out for a few more laps. It's like, oh, maybe he's trying for the one stop, and there's like 2 laps later, no, he's coming in, which means it's not a one stop. Was he the only one stopper in the end? He must have been.
I didn't check, but it feels like it because most others I was tracking, you saw them stopping at least twice.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like how one and like there was. It's the interesting thing about this race is like we're talking about it. How obviously the pit stops are a big part of the strategy here, and that's what makes this race so interesting because there's always differences in the pit stops, like every time you come here. And they were talking about how 1, 2, and 3 pit stops were potential, like people pitting so early, Ricciardo being one of them. Obviously it didn't work out, as comments after the race from him will show. But the fact that a 1 stop could work, or a 3 stop could work, or a 2 stop could work is like, I don't know that we've seen a track like that yet, or a race like that where a 1, 2, or a 3 stop could work. Like that just doesn't really happen.
It's funny how this track just works. I guess it helps because the pit lane is pretty short. Like that last corner, you arguably save time, and it's very narrow. You have to see cars really struggling to get out because it is so short. So that obviously alludes to it being easy if you're going to take more stops. And just due to the nature of the circuit, you can really toss it around, put a lot of load. That's why there was so many comments to Lando and Oscar about particular corners to say, you've got to lift off more there because you will just absolutely shred it to tits. And you're not going to lose that much if you just lift off a little bit.
Yeah.
So it is a good place to express that driver skill and that balance. And some people won't like it because I also get the argument to say, we should have tires where you can just like, you have to stop 3 times or like even 2 times because you're absolutely pushing it and shredding it rather than it being you can do it because you're balancing pace and wear. I guess if you're like more of a newbie or a casual fan, I totally get it because you just want to see people racing and diving and dicing. You know what I'm saying? But it's like this could be really interesting from the wear perspective. Like this is even the one where they chose, and they even they made a bit of a joke about it for Sky Sports where they're doing this, I don't know what the series is called, like how it works. Yeah. And they did it on tires, and they say, we know this is boring, but here in particular, it's quite interesting. And you went, no, this was the right place to do that, because actually almost everything they talked about was bang on relevant here, 100%. So, so I guess on those 4 drivers, anything else? we want to mention for now? Or?
Honestly, I didn't really. I haven't made notes. I was just kind of going off thoughts and feelings more than anything. But
there's so much you could go into.
You could, yeah.
I mean, even the fact that Max's engineer almost telling him to like stop it, like as much as they often have a bit of back and forth and like almost attacking each other, the fact that he would just disregarded his comments partway through the race. Like, even genuinely, when some drivers get pushed up, they go, cool, we'll report it, even if they think nothing's going to happen for it. Even if you go, why are they reporting it, you go, of course they're going to report it.
This was
one of Max said
this was on the last move where he dive bombed and he said Hamilton cut across me or whatever it was.
Exactly.
And he's like, don't stop this, this is childish.
Like, he couldn't even say, sure, we saw it, get on with it. It wasn't even that. He just said stop. That's pretty significant as well. I mean, this leads into this whole bigger picture, which is almost quieting down a little bit, but the whole tension between Max and team. And you go, but if the car's performing, does it matter?
Well,
and you go, sure, probably not. But now at the instant it's not performing, and this is what's happening.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually.
You wonder why Toto is almost keeping that seat free and is like, we're going to keep it free until we see where this plays out, because it's not impossible for this to lead one way.
A week ago I would have told you were crazy, but we
were almost going, look, we've heard the rumors, we know, but it did play out live 100 times throughout the weekend.
Yep, that's fair. Well,
it's gonna be an interesting mid-season.
Let's have a conversation about that in our mid-season. Actually, I guess speaking of our mid-season, just as a real segue, we're not going to be chatting about F2, F3. We're going to talk about that in the mid-season debrief as well, because we've kind of missed a couple of races. I haven't even caught up. I don't know if you've caught up.
I haven't caught up. I kind of have a cheeky peek at the results sometimes because I'm curious.
Yeah, I've been
semi-spoiled, but because I'm interested. But I haven't fully. I'm not far off behind, so we'll have a proper debrief, as you say, mid-season, and then I guess there's not too much to follow out from there, so we should be able to keep it up race by race.
For sure, yeah. But I mean, the only other we're talking Max. Let's talk the other driver and check in with Checo.
Hey.
The race was actually not too bad.
For a recovery drive, he and Russell probably did what they could. And he wasn't that far off Russell the entire race. You would say on any other weekend, that's a solid recovery, a solid second driver move. But why was he recovering? Was it because he had to change parts on his car? Was it because infringement? Was it locked in quali, rain? I don't remember. Can you...
He crashed. He crashed, Kyle.
Oh.
Crashed in Q1. Yes. Yeah, that's...
And surely he wasn't the only one that just got unlucky and had a slip there, and we didn't see a similar driver the lap before also have a slip, but recover the car, because you can recover cars when they spin.
We did.
Lose it.
We did see that, actually. In fact, I don't remember who it
familiar.
Was, was it a Ferrari, maybe?
Might have been a little more silver.
No, it was okay. Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, did you actually not know?
No, I didn't know. Yeah,
Russell did like the same thing the lap earlier.
Okay,
he clipped that curb. He had a shimmy, but he saved it.
Yeah. No, I do remember someone do it. I just didn't remember who. So
I didn't know if you were playing into the bit.
No. I wish I was. I'm just that forgetful.
Yes.
Yeah, Checo, I actually said this to... Did I say it to you? Maybe I said it to just the group chat that I'm in. But when he crashed out in Q1, I'm like, it's Checo done. He's done. He's out. Mid-season, he's gone. Like, there's no way he stays in this car. The recovery drive maybe has given him an extra race to try and fight on, but... I don't know, man. Like, this sort of shit is happening. It's every race now. There's something with Checo. And he does... It's not even like... It's a small error and he drops a couple of places. Like, he messes up his final lap in Q3 and he, instead of starting P4, he starts P7 or something. It's like, no, he does it properly and goes out in Q1 and crashes the fucking car. Has to start from... I don't know. Was it P19 or something? Whatever it was. It was something way back there. So... do you see him keeping his seat? Maybe we'll leave that for the mid-season break. But
The only chance he has is if Max is gonna leave, and then the team are like,
yeah, that throws a spanner in the works, doesn't it?
I know that's the underlying thing that's almost just like, damn, if we ditch him now and then we also lose Max, is it better to have two unknown, or is it better to have him because he knows? Oh, it's so.
Boy,
Funny how you're gonna have a car
Ricardo's
that's so
looking
dominant.
pretty good right now, right? Yeah.
I do love that the conversation is almost shifting to say, put Yuki in that car. Like, it doesn't matter if they, they've had their reasons to withhold him, that Ricardo, they still like him. It's still just like, damn, like that man is doing pretty
so well, man.
He would
He's
make
killing
it very hard to say no now, even if you have reservations on his attitude, on his whatever, even his incident in quali. It was such a minor unlucky thing, and it was a bigger thing that it should have been. If that was just normal tarmac runoff, he would have just pulled it in, maybe got a track limits, you look the other way. They even changed that exit overnight because they went, that incident was far more worse than it should have been. We're going to put some gravel there so it just catches the car and you'll be all good.
Yeah.
Stupid unlucky. Compared to the Checo thing, super unlucky. And then he made up for it in the race. He finished even higher than he ended up being.
Yep.
It's hard to envision not putting him in there, and even as much as we say it, I mean, even Isaac Hadjar is still doing a bloody good job. The fact that people are talking about him now, we have to talk about the juniors because we keep up with them. Sometimes you don't hear them mentioned in commentary, but you actually hear him a lot more mentioned because people are starting to notice him and see this bigger picture and go, hold on, you've got two great juniors there. Maybe they'll soon start talking about Awasa as well. We like him, and he's also not doing that bad.
Pretty well in the Super Formula. It's just not in the direct Formula 1, Formula 2 public eye. So, But can you imagine next year we see fucking
Ricardo Lawson in the Red Bull?
No, I was thinking Tsunoda Lawson in the Red Bull and Ricardo Hadjar in the V-Carb.
You can see it.
It's
they probably should.
It's probably, man. I don't even know. That requires,
if they lose Max, of course.
Of course, that's what I mean.
One of those two with Max.
I don't know that they'll lose Max like this year or next year. I think it's more maybe 2026.
You'd have to really have something gargantuan. Like it's not like Max has been in other teams. Like, he's been Red Bull since basically the day he was born, as far as I know. So it would be a big message for him to move. As much as what he says in public and all that is one thing. I mean, he's much like his dad, in that his dad also used to say a lot in public, and yet behind the scenes it was a bit different. But you don't get to this level that we had this race without some sort of tension behind the scenes. And we've heard enough from his dad as well, as much as he tries to separate himself from him, that Jos has stopped turning up because he's that unhappy about things, which says enough. We keep finding a way to talk back to Red Bull because you can just talk endlessly about Max. There's just so much from this one race. It's who could have predicted this? What is going on? What
a season. I mean, again, we're going
what a sport.
We're going to talk about it in the mid-season preview, but it's just shaping up to be one of the most fascinating seasons of F1. I think it's a good word. Not even the best, because some could argue that 2021 was the best because obviously we had that close fight at the front. I get it. I know some people are saying that this is the best season since 2021. I would argue this is the best season so far. The fact that we've had 7 different race winners in 13 races now? Like, the fact that we've had 7 different winners and we're just over halfway through the season is already insane. I don't think we'll get 8 different winners, but you never know. Maybe Checo will pull his finger out and do something in Spa before he gets fired. So, but it's pretty insane.
It probably says as much that we've only lightly touched on Ferrari. I mean, they made an ample point that they were kind of there or thereabouts. Now, they did say that it was hotter here, and this circuit doesn't really expose the true weaknesses of their car because it's very middle speed. As much as obviously the heat and this type of circuit really works for other cars, again, it doesn't really hurt them too much. They kind of played it a bit safe. Leclerc, I think, overall didn't have the pace over Sainz. It is unfortunate, jumping ahead a bit, that Max didn't get a penalty, because then one of us actually would have had a Ferrari in P5. Who could have predicted Max in P5? Not us, that's for sure. That would have been a golden goose 5 points if we got that one, I tell you what.
Yeah, well, you almost got it. Like, before the Max incident, you had Leclerc in P5, and then he dove down, and I'm just like, oh my god, Sainz could get him, and he could get P5, and I could get the 2 points.
It's fun to watch that that individual plays, especially when it's for something like P5.
And neither of us win now, so that's fun.
Yeah, but it was a safe drive by them. They probably got what they could out of Sainz. Again, cashed in, a bit lucky on it.
After a poor
P4
start.
Nothing to scoff at.
Oh, no, I think Leclerc got P4 and Sainz got P6, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
Was it the other way around?
I think it was the other way
I
around.
think it was.
No, because
they were at the start, but
Sainz got a really bad start, and Leclerc got a much better start. So, I'm almost certain that's the case. I'm sure I've got a note. Yeah, Leclerc P4, and then Sainz P6.
Okay.
So,
because I did flip it in my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go. So even though Leclerc qualified lower and I think was a little upset about it, he was, I guess, in that start muck up, he did get ahead, and ultimately, as we saw with the few other drivers, that's what kept him ahead. So I think the race pace from both those drivers was fine. They were even close enough early on. If a driver had a puncture, a bad pit stop, or whatever, they could have taken advantage. But ultimately, their overall pace wasn't enough. But again, they made it very clear this track doesn't expose their weakness. Rather than being a good track for their car, it's just a middling. It's also the weaknesses aren't coming out here. And the hot temperatures they actually enjoy. It's really the cool temperatures.
It's interesting because last year was the exact opposite, it seemed, where their tires would just disintegrate at the sight of the sun. But this year they seem to be really good in the hot temperatures. It's, very interesting. But
and I guess a team that reacts to the weather, of course, is Aston Martin. They quite enjoy the cold. They even weren't happy with quali. Alonso in particular was throwing an absolute shit fit at the FIA.
Speaking of angry people,
I didn't really get the full story. It feels like that they had that kind of interim bit in the middle where we weren't sure if they were going to resume. And Alonso had both got pulled into the weighbridge and been told to go weigh himself by the FIA when the session wasn't fully over. Now, no one really improved except for Ricciardo, but it sounds like Alonso thought in those conditions he could have improved a little bit. I think he also felt they called the red flag too early. We've talked about how sometimes they'll see a car crash and they wait until a car's coming up to call a red flag. You can see it often in F2 or F3. They'll have carnage at the first corner. The race was still going for about 30 seconds. You know they're going to have to red flag it or safety car it because there's 10 cars on top of each other at T1. But they're still at the end of the lap watching them skewer and go around each other because they probably go, let them race for a little bit, but we're still going to call it before it's safe. And I think Alonso was a little miffed because he was on a lap or something and about to finish when they called it, so he didn't get his best, his final lap in, and then the end bit. Apparently there was some team order dramas in the race too, from what I heard.
Yeah, probably.
Where Stroll was asked to let him through and he refused. Go on.
Before you move on to that, I just had a really good thought that segue, but the whole point where you said they wait half a lap before they come back around to call that red flag. I'm noticing some flaws with that in the fact that if you know there's going to be a red flag, do you start driving way more aggressively to make sure you get the places so that way when they call the red flag, you're ahead? All they could do on the team radio is hey, get as many places as you can, send dive bombs because you'll have the place and the red flag will be called and that's where you'll start. Anyway, sorry, go back.
Maybe it's too hard to do. No, it's a fair point. Maybe it's too hard to do.
I had to get that point
off. As I say, it's most obvious in those cars because they do move slower and there's so many of them. You will see it, where they'll often cut back to the first corner crash and they'll cut back because there's a battle for the lead. You go, why haven't they stopped yet? And then they go, they're still fighting. And then you cut back and there's two drivers beating each other up in the middle of T1. No, I didn't see the full details. Apparently, Stroll was asked to let him through near the end. I don't know if it was to give Alonso the chance to the attack because it was a similar to the McLaren thing. He denied it. Alonso, after the race, was seen talking to an FIA guy, literally throwing his jumpsuit on the floor in disgust while he was being weighed, and the guy had to pick it up. Russell was apparently there, watching. So there's a great shot of Alonso looking angry, the FIA guy looking like he's getting yelled at, and Russell just staring casually into the camera, looking beautiful. So the fact they're upset about quality, I mean, again, they like the wet and the damp. They did, I guess, fairly well in the race, but the heat did hurt them a bit. But I think it was similar to the Ferrari, where their car just didn't have its weaknesses here. But there's, if you look at overall pace and gains from the season, they're one of like 2 cars that have very clearly gotten further behind the top teams, where everyone else, such as Alpine, Williams, at least show quite a catch up to the top teams where they're not. So I think that'll be another one where maybe mid-season we actually need to have a look, because you just kind of forget about them and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because they're not directly at the front, but they're not directly at the back, so you kind of just see them get a point or two. You go, yeah, I guess they deserved it, but how long? It wasn't that long ago. We were saying, when's Alonso's first win in this team? It's just around the corner, surely. And we're already seeing that frustration with Alonso come out. It's this trend he always goes through. He starts off so strong. This is the best team ever. I'm so happy. So many times this weekend, he goes, do whatever you want, mate. Oh, I don't care. Oh, this car feels shit. Oh, what? It's already going to that level. So where's he moving for 2025? That's the question.
God, he's burnt so many bridges. There's nowhere left, right?
Time to burn another one.
Yeah. You're right. They're just, Aston seem like the most sort of nowhere team at the moment. Maybe Sauber as well. They kind of show they're moving slowly in the right direction. They're not quite as right at the back as they have been.
They're kind of in a holding pattern as a team as well.
Yes, for the Audi. Yeah, so.
Well, Aston are just moving backwards from what they said was their baseline, which was to be a number 2 constructor contender.
Yep.
And they're not close to it at all.
No, long way off. They're barely, I was going to say, are they 5th, 6th? Barely 5th, 6th?
They'd be fighting for 5th at best.
Yeah, at best.
I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's not trending the right direction for them.
Nah.
But I mean that was pretty much all the thoughts that I had about it. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to mention before we sign it off. We're at about an hour, so.
I know. I think this is a good place to end it.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot more you could go into about this weekend, but if anything, just go back and watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, I like how you cut yourself off. Like, it was No, wrong word.
I like the word fascinating. I mean, I often put on a little bit of the race before I go to bed, and sometimes I'm dozing off a bit or I'm a bit distracted, and then I rewatch it. But I was
glued.
Engrossed in just what was happening. Even at one point, I was, I don't know, like 70% in it. And I'm like, I just have to go to bed. I'll have time in the morning, so I know I won't get spoiled. I was praying for you. I was like, oh my God, please tell me you've watched this, because you will just get spoiled and you will kick yourself, because it'll just ruin everything and how it plays out.
Yep.
So as soon as I saw you go, that was good, I was like, I would have hated to have you find that one out. Bad for you.
I made sure to watch that, and the fact that
good man.
How it was all playing out halfway through the race, I'm like,
well, all you had to see was lap 1, and you went, okay, now I've got to see how this plays out.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was already like, but all the way through the race, like you say, there was just stuff happening all the way through. Whether it's team radios, whether it's not so much moves, but like strategy
storylines to play out,
exactly.
Which like, I have to figure out how this plays out.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just a very, very fascinating race to watch. But that's it from us. Let us know, anyone listening or watching, let us know your thoughts. If you have any other opinions, particularly on those top 4 drivers. It's, as I said, it's a very nuanced, I guess, situation, particularly with the McLaren one. I'm curious if there's any other opinions that maybe we haven't discussed, but otherwise we'll be back very, very soon. In fact, literally this weekend for the the Belgium Grand Prix, and then we've got a nice long break, and then, like I said, tune in for our mid-season podcast, which will hopefully get out within the first week or two of the mid-season break as well, where we'll break down the season, we'll discuss some F2, we'll have some driver chat for 2025, I think, as well. So, but yeah, stay tuned for our preview of Spa. Until then, take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Laters.